This video is a thorough analysis and review of a video made by Dr. Flint Dibble, a content creator, professional archaeologist and professor who has become famous and somewhat controversial due to his appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience episode 2136, where he faced off Graham Hancock on a debate about Hancock's hypothesis for an ancient Ice Age civilization. On this video we will examine Dr. Dibble's methodology, language use and soundness of arguments during this video of his in order to show, in my opinion, a clear lack of intellectual rigor, intellectual honesty, and most importantly academic neutrality, which is a necessary trait academics should all have when they enter the socio-political sphere of any debate. Regardless of your personal feelings and convictions, please refrain from any form of harassment towards Dr. Dibble. I do not condone direct attacks on him, his channel, his place of work and the like. On this channel, we attack the arguments, not the person. Please be civil and decent. Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we have got a lot to talk about, my friends. What we're going to do today is pattern analysis, and it's gonna go deep. We're going to go deep down the rabbit hole because I noticed something, and when I notice something I investigate it and go deeper and deeper and deeper. I noticed some patterns and mostly some logical fallacies in the way Mr. Dibble presents his arguments. Now, do I hate Mr. Dibble? No. Do I hate his rhetoric up to this point? Yes. Do I sometimes agree with him? Absolutely. In fact, today, I will be fair. I will show you each and every single time I think he's using well-known logical fallacies to present his arguments in a way that is dishonest, and call it out every single time, but at the same time, I will do something that my detractors never do with me. I will acknowledge when he's correct. I will stand by him when he says something that I think is right, so I will basically take his statements, even if I know that the broader rhetoric is something that I strongly disagree with. Still, if he makes a point, and I think is a good point, I'll say it. The video in question is a 56 minutes and 47 seconds video called The Archaeology Wars. Call to action. This is a call to action. A little bit of marketing terminology here. To support public education and science communication. In theory, I wouldn't have a problem with the idea of supporting public education and science communication, but as you will see, this is not a good representation of the sort of call to action that I believe this gentleman is today pushing. I've already watched this, but I will be skipping sections because I don't want to be copy claimed. So there are some sections from Joe Rogan Experience. There is only one little bit that I have to show, and hopefully that will not block. There will be other sections that I will skip. But every time I will tell you what was said in that section, and you will be able to double check that on your own if you wish in the original episode, because of course on Flint Dibble's channel, clearly.
Archaeology today is now dead.
Perhaps the extremely defensive, arrogant and patronizing attitude of mainstream academia is stopping us from considering that possibility.
They're just crackpots.
Very
compromised.
Hello, everybody. My name is Flint Dibble, and I'm very happy to see you here. And I want to talk to you today about pseudo-archaeology and some of my own personal experience from going on Joe Rogan to debate Graham Hancock, and sort of the ways in which I think about engaging on social media. And why we have to speak up and engage and support each other who are engaging. This is extremely important in my own mind.
Okay.
So for those of you that don't know, Graham Hancock's brand of pseudo-archaeology is that there's a lost advanced civilization from the Ice Age that taught hunter-gatherers all that they know. So that's what I'm going to focus on.
Yes, that's the first thing I would like to say. As far as I understand, I don't believe in the Ice Age civilization. With that being said, I don't think he has ever claimed to be an archaeologist. If you know otherwise, let me know.
Look, I want to be clear. I used to laugh at this shit too.
Okay, I'm going to skip this section from the Joe Rogan Experience, but let me tell you, this gentleman here is talking about how there were some devices underneath the pyramids, and then the pyramids were used to build electricity because this electricity was used to power electrical devices used by ancient Egyptians, aliens. That's the summary of this section, okay? Of course, I don't believe in this either.
Evidence of a device.
Look, I know it's really silly that people believe this from our own lived experience doing actual archaeology, but it's real, and we have to speak up. The reason why is we live in an environment, a social political environment, where
Right.
fake news, misinformation, and disinformation are having real impacts on things like the public discourse around climate change.
Okay, so at this point, I want to begin my first counter argument to the positioning assumed, acquired, held by Mr. Dibble. So the first thing I would like to say is he's now speaking about fake news. Okay? Now, what I would expect from a neutral professional, because he's a professor, right? What I would expect from a neutral professional is that after saying this, since now he went from the purely academical sphere into the socio-political sphere, that he will now call out misinformation and fake news on both sides of the political spectrum. Because that's what a professional does. Given you could tell me, as some people say, oh, but Metatron, you don't do that, because some people call me a right-wing grifter, occasionally people call me woke, whatever. I do have proof, and it's right here, that even though I am absolutely calling him to do that, you should call out nonsense on both sides. Here is the proof, before we even continue with this, here is the proof that I absolutely do. Okay, I'm going to remove my camera for a moment. The videos on the left are videos that triggered left-wing people, and videos on the right are videos that I made that triggered right-wing people. Because the reality is that I do not care that if something is nonsense, it doesn't matter where it comes from, it doesn't matter that I myself have my own personal political leanings, I'm very moderate, I'm not an extremist, but regardless, on some things I lean right, on some things, maybe a little bit on the economic spectrum, I lean left. It doesn't matter, because I take it and I put it aside. I look at the information. If it's nonsense, it's nonsense, and I'll call it out. Why? Because I promised you that I would do that. But just so to show you, oh, but you're asking him to do this. Do you do it yourself? Here is the proof. No, but once. Here is the proof. So he's going into the socio-political sphere. Is he going to be the neutral academic that only cares about the truth and will call out misinformation on both sides? Now, on this channel, we love talking about all sorts of topics, for instance, the medieval period, feudal Japan, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, but you know what a medieval knight and a Roman soldier had in common? Neither would go to a battle without a helmet. Why? Because there are all sorts of threats that occur during war, and you want to make sure you have got enough protection. You know what else is a battleground? The internet, my friends, and this is why I would like to mention now the kind sponsor that made this video possible, NordVPN. NordVPN has a mission, in their own words. We strive to make the internet better than it is today. It should be free from online threats, censorship, and surveillance. Considering the fact how much time we spend online, I mean, look at you. For instance, phishing prevention. Threat Protection Pro is a certified anti-phishing tool, which NordVPN offers, and it detects at least 85% of phishing websites. Get the exclusive NordVPN deal plus 4 months for free by clicking the links in the description and using my code Metatron. It's risk-free, 30 days, money-back guarantee. One way that I use NordVPN is when I need to check out articles for my research, and sometimes these are geo-blocked, in the sense that depending on which region you are, you might not have access to these articles. Well, with NordVPN, all you need to do is one click, change the area of your location, and boom, you've got access to whatever you need. And of course, you can use that as well for movies and all sorts of entertainment that is, as we say, region-specific. Your traffic is always protected with robust encryption, and you can turn on kill switch to make sure your data is never exposed by accident. So what are you waiting for? Get the exclusive NordVPN deal plus 4 months for free by clicking the link in the description and using my code Metatron, and you also get a 30 days money back guarantee. And massive thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring my video.
Vaccination, higher education, research institutions, all the things that we really care about and that make our world good are under threat right now, and archaeology is part and parcel of this public discourse. Over the last several decades, pseudo-archaeology has become increasingly popular, with shows like Ancient Aliens on the History Channel leading the charge. If you look at searches for English language words in English books, you can see that Atlantis in particular is the granddaddy of all conspiracy theories and pseudoscience. It is mentioned more commonly in books than astrology, JFK, UFOs, creationism, numerology, the moon landing, crystal healings, and ancient aliens.
Okay, all of these things, he's putting all of the things that we see on the right here. Okay, so he's being very specific. He considers all of these as being conspiracy theories, to be nonsense.
Conspiracy theories and pseudoscience.
Okay, just at the same level of Atlantis. But the reality is that these do not belong all on the same box. And this is something he will do a lot. Let me expand. Do I believe in Atlantis? No. Cupping? I don't know what it means. Do I believe in astrology? No. JFK is a very controversial discussion about the reasons behind Kennedy and how he was. I think it's about the assassination of Kennedy, unless this is about JFK Jr., but then there would have been a junior here. So I believe this is about the assassination of Kennedy, which is a very controversial topic anyways. It's not like any of us who are in the freaking... We can discuss, but it's not like any of us really knows. Do you think we know what happened? The political underpinnings underneath that? I personally don't, so I don't think that I would put this in the same as astrology, because to me, astrology, yeah, I don't believe in it. If you love it, my mom loved it. My mom would open the thing, she would read it and say, look, your sign says you're gonna get a lot of money this month. And I'd be like, hey, if I get a lot of money, it'd be great. But you know what? I don't believe it, whatever. But I wouldn't put it with this, because these are two completely different things. When it comes to UFO and at the bottom, ancient aliens, I personally, one, believe the aliens do exist, but I don't know if aliens have ever reached us. And that's unfortunately something that I don't think we can completely and categorically state. It never happened. I don't know. I think it would be fascinating. I'm not convinced by the evidence of the idea of ancient astronaut theory, but I do leave a little window of possibility, because I'm thinking, who the heck knows? So I wouldn't put it in the same position as alpha male. When it comes to creationism, I'm a Christian, so I would appreciate you wouldn't put me into the conspiracy, because I'm absolutely a creationist. I do believe there is creation given. I'm an old earth creationist. I'm not a young earth creationist. I think young earth creation, I respect them as fellow Christians, but I don't think they're right. I think they're wrong. I can make a dedicated video about it if you want. Regardless, I personally wouldn't put it here. Maybe you would, because maybe you're atheist. I respect you as well. I respect everyone. Freedom to everyone. I'm just saying numerology. So like when you see number 16, you have to do 6 + 1, which means 7. And this is a connection. I mean, numeral, crystal healing, moon landing again. It's a lot of stuff that belongs, in my opinion, to different tiers. Regardless, let's continue.
It's also mentioned more commonly in English language books than Pompeii, the Sphinx, the Acropolis, and Stonehenge.
Yes. Well, that is because, to be fair, I love Pompeii, but when you give me a good story of ancient aliens, it is fascinating.
These are real challenges that we face, and this has been documented clearly as well. Polls out of Chapman University show that about 50% of Americans believe in Atlantis or a similar lost advanced civilization from the Ice Age. So this is pervasive, and we cannot blame our fellow Americans and citizens and people around the world for believing this, because it is presented as legitimate in mainstream sources. Places like Netflix, IMDb, and Amazon all list Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse or his books as legitimate archaeology.
I wonder though, because, well, we'll have to double check this. I don't know if he's right. And this is considered, well, what do you mean by legitimate? Because, of course, Graham, I can't pronounce it, Hancock is not an archaeologist. So maybe I would put it into a different category. So I would agree with him when it comes to this.
As do newspapers like the Daily Mail here in the UK and the New York Post in the US.
Daily Mail is full of nonsense. So I agree that I guess he doesn't like it. I'm not a fan of Daily Mail either.
So we cannot blame ordinary people who have not taken any university level classes on archaeology for believing this stuff.
Right.
And so we have to speak up. And there's also this clear relationship between Graham Hancock and other pseudoscience influencers and politics.
Right.
So for example, Graham Hancock is one of the top guests on right-wing political podcasts and YouTube shows. We can see him here. He's in the list with all these other right-wing individuals. So there's a clear overlap and relationship between politics and pseudo-archaeology.
I would like to make a comment on this because today is going to be a really spicy one, guys, and I'm just going to say what I think. I'm just going to go all in. I'm not going to censor anything. I'm not going to try to be like, oh, I don't want to say that because it could offend people. You know me, I'm just going to say what I think. So he just made a statement. And, you know, I like the fact that I can present an opinion from a moderate perspective. So he says, oh, Graham Hancock tends to be invited or is invited by right-wing influencers, right? That's what he said. I would like to add a little factor to this, though. I wouldn't mind having Graham Hancock here as a guest, just like I wouldn't mind having him here as a guest. I don't care if you're left, right, center, apolitical. You can, if you want to talk, you can come here. So at the end of the day, I guess, would he think that now because Graham Hancock is on my channel, then automatically that makes me the furthest right on the planet? I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. But I do want to ask this question, Mr. Dibble. Do you think that the correlation, the causal link between Graham Hancock and right-wing podcasts is due to the fact that Graham Hancock is a right-winger, or that right-wingers love Graham Hancock and his work? Or do you think that maybe it's because usually people on the left call him a white supremacist? So, how about we test this theory? Let's find a left-wing podcast or a left-wing channel that talks about history, and that channel doesn't call him a racist and a white supremacist. Let's see if then Graham Hancock will agree to appear on said podcast. Because if the answer is yes, then I think there is a factor that needs to be taken into consideration, whether you're left or right. You're gonna give me this, and you would be like, yeah, Metatron, but are you sure that it's true? You will show you. You know that I have 9 tabs up there? Oh, I'll defend this point. I will defend this point, because we need to consider all the factors that lead to a result. To be thorough about this, we need to see all the factors. Why is this thing happening the way it's happening? He's presented one possibility. Oh, it's because right-wingers love the stuff Graham Hancock does. Maybe, but maybe we should also factor in how usually you're pushing white supremacy. Oh, he doesn't come to my podcast. He only goes to the podcast on the right wing. Well, maybe ask yourself why, is all I'm going to say here. But please, Mr. Flint, continue.
Back in the 90s, authority figures were the gatekeepers. They controlled everything. If an authority figure in a discipline like archaeology said, Hancock is completely wrong, he's made all this stuff up, that would generally be believed, not by everybody, but by the majority of people. Today, to have a mainstream authority figure say that to me is...
Blah, 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 blah. So I don't have it in one long stream. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, no copy claim.
Actually an advantage, because people are so distrustful of authority, and rightly so, because we've been lied to by authority figures in all fields for so long. The bullshit has been so enormous that people are finally waking up, and we can't trust what authority figures say. And
okay, so let me comment on what, because this little section was presented by Flint Dibble to show us how bad Mr. Hancock is. This is still coming from someone who does not believe what Mr. Hancock proposes. But what he said right now, he was absolutely right. Spot on. Spot on. Okay, I don't have any personal feelings about the man. I don't care. Like, completely. Whatever. But what he said now is real. He's right. So how is it going to Flint? Literally, what are you going to say to this, Mr. Dibble? That is wrong, that currently, that in the past, academia would say something and everyone would be like, oh, yeah, you're right, blah, blah, blah. But now with the advent of social media, with the advent of the internet, the access of more and more people to information in the massive information age, we know that we're being lied to by mainstream academics and professors. I do this all the time. And guys, I can prove it. I've got them all here. You'll see this is a fire stream. So what he said... that we cannot, that doesn't mean everyone, by the way. Of course, there are academics that are fantastic, they do follow the law, the rule of academic neutrality, that they just look at the facts, that they don't push politics, that they're not here for a message, they don't virtual signal, they don't do dog whistle. Of course they exist, and I love them. I have plenty of contacts within academia, my team included, that are fantastic. But you also have the horrible professors that are using there, and that's a fact. That's a fact. And they lie. And now we don't trust them. He's 100% right. 100%. So how is Flint Dibble going to respond to that? Replay this little bit.
So, because we've been lied to by authority figures in all fields for
True.
so long, the bullshit has been so enormous that people are finally waking up. And we can't trust what authority figures say. And
Sometimes we can, but in general, you want to use your critical thinking. He's correct. He's correct.
Just as there has historically been a clear relationship between pseudo-archaeology narratives that strip indigenous people of their credit for their own heritage and colonialism as well as white supremacism.
I've got a lot, guys, about this specifically. I'm going to let him finish this little section.
This is well documented in articles published by the SAA and elsewhere, and it's something that should motivate us to speak up.
Colonialism and white supremacy, right? Are you ready? I want to show you now some sections from videos of mine where I've reviewed mainstream professors and academics. And let's see if there is a connection. I'm also putting Professor Dave, even though he's not a professor, but I'm still putting in here because I want to show you.
It's really quite racist, actually. Conquer their sexuality, white supremacy.
In normative society, racist and imperialist implications, identity politics, coming to political action, binary gender, capitalist, gay, racial hierarchies, queer sexuality, queer relationship, gender and sexuality, climate change. There's a homophobic undertone, gender, than it does around sexuality. Not just homoerotic, but homoerotic, sexualized perversity, vampire identity.
Which Roman emperor was objectively the best? An empire was an autocracy, which means that all Roman emperors were autocrats. And it means I don't actually think any of them were very good people. Men have sex with women have sex with men, women have sex with women have sex with men. And so much like today, it was really a spectrum. And so much like today,
First bust you see is a bust of Septimius Severus, alabaster white. When it was in real life in the Roman world, it would have been painted as he was, a man from North Africa, a black man.
What does Professor Dave say? What is it that Professor Dave doesn't like about Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix? Is it the lack of historical evidence?
It's racist as shit to pretend that indigenous people were idiots who can't possibly have developed the things they definitely did develop. So they must have had them given to them by white people or aliens. You make racist people even more racist.
Misogynist, white supremacy. Ooh, I'm starting to see a pattern.
And modern imperialism. As with any other question about this, right? First, let's call the thing what it is. This obsession with trying to make sure that this great general Hannibal, the man who makes Rome tremble, is a white man. Is of course the desire is strong and anti-black as part of the sort of history of the development of that Arab invasion.
Did I paint a picture? Just in case you had any doubt, I've never seen any professor or any human being being so obsessed with the term white supremacy as Professor Dr. Futo Kennedy. She literally talks about this everywhere. Her classes at university are all about this. Doesn't matter where you look. White supremacy, racist, white supremacists and gender study, racism, white supremacy, gender studies, racist, white supremacy, gender studies. It's all this. Conveniently, however, whenever you ask Professor Kennedy whether a specific individual was black, so you ask about the ethnicity, she tells you it doesn't matter. No, but once, I'm starting to see those are all big shot professors, exception being Professor Dave. They're all big shot professors. So, I would like to say one thing. Once again, Graham Hancock, if you're watching this in any moment, you have not convinced me when it comes to your Ice Age civilization. I'm going to need a lot more proof than that. But sir, when you said this...
To have a mainstream authority figure say that to me is actually an advantage because people are so distrustful of authority, and rightly so, because we...
He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. So, dear Flint Dibble, where are you? Where did you go? Dear Flint Dibble. So, dear Flint Dibble, up to this point, I'm starting to see a little bit of a pattern. White supremacy, colonialism, imperialism, Europe bad, white bad. And look, I hate racists. I hate people that hate black people, and I think it's wrong, but I also hate people that hate white people. I think it's wrong. But this gentleman, up to this point, And we'll continue, because I'm going to establish what I'm going to say now. You know how I just proved? All of those big shot professors, they all say the exact same thing. It's a brainwashing. They all say the exact same thing as him. So, yeah, as Hancock correctly stated. And I don't trust him even more, because I've got a team, we review the data, we read the ancient sources. Can you read the ancient languages? Flint Dibble, because we can. All together, we can read easily 7 to 9 languages, 3 of which are dead. And when we read it, it is uncovered the nonsense that is being pushed for political reasons, virtual signaling, dog whistles, and all of that kind of stuff. Here's the next thing I'm going to establish. I think I established this one, but here's the next thing I'm going to establish. Is he going to apply, like I do, the same kind of scrutiny and the same kind of calling out the nonsense on both sides, particularly when discussing Netflix? How about we check it out?
And they also target our colleagues. This is a very clear targeting of our colleagues. For example, this email that Graham Hancock published when he complained about not being able to film at Serpent Mound at the Serpent Mound in Ohio. He showed a series of emails between him and Ohio History Connection, which manages the site, and he redacted the email addresses and names of people from his production company, but he left up the name and email address of people from Ohio History.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done this. Yeah, I think this is wrong.
Connection, so they could be flooded with trolls.
I want the main antagonist, and that's John Hoops from the University of Kansas, and John Hoops from the University of Kansas is a coward.
This is what Dan has to say about Professor Hoops.
No. He's an asshole about it. He's a liar. He will put falsehoods in a journal and pound at people, block people, and throw rocks at them.
Hey, debunking
them from behind that block. He is deplorable, you could say, underhanded. And that's because he's fighting the worst parts of himself. Thanks a lot. You guys have a good day. We'll see you next time.
And he really hates archaeologists as a group of people.
Most alternate historians.
Yeah, one thing to say about this, he will continue to show now, just to give you full context, okay? Because when things are not shown in full context, they may appear for what they're not. So he's going to show all the horrible things, or we could say like rude language that has been used by debunking, that has been used by Jimmy Corsetti, that has been used by Graham Hancock, without the context. So, do I approve of the language that these 3 gentlemen are using? No. But let's not pretend that the other side is all nice and flower, because you see, I am like that. I don't use the kind of language. You remember when I was called a fascist, a white supremacist, a monster, a disgusting, a slavery apologist by Alec Gunter? Did I call him anything? No? That's my style. However, if there are 2 parties and they are at each other's throat and they both say a lot of rude stuff like that, you can't single out the messages from one side, because then it makes it look like, oh, they are being asshole, but this side is being very nice. Can we remember the likes of Professor Dave? Let me see if I have it here. That's how he speaks, the parts that I put in blue. Can we remember this? So is he, Flint Dibble, gonna show this? No, of course not. Because Flint Dibble, Professor Dave, I guess Zahi Hawass at this point, they're all in one group, and tribalism does that, and I hate it, which is why instead I, for example, respect people like, what's her name, Shoe on Head, because she criticizes the other side of the political spectrum and her side of the political spectrum when she thinks they're saying or doing something despicable. I appreciate that. And I think that should be the common sense, the commonality that should drive our ability to use our own heads. So, I mean, look at this. So yes, I guess if this guy, for instance, uses this word against, imagine, the dunking, and then the dunking responds in kind, you have to show both, like I am doing. You gotta show both. Shoe. I love shoe. Yeah, shoe is cool. Shoe is great. You got to show both sides, because otherwise you're being dishonest. You're being disingenuous. So I'm gonna see. Boom! Look at this. This is the other side. And for instance, Minute Man, I think tends to be connected with this side. I do like Minute Man, so I will say that. I like Minute Man. I do not like Professor Dave one bit. I do like Minute Man, and up to this point, to me, it appears that Flint Dibble is playing favorites, is not being the academic that is neutral and shows you both sides, is not doing that, because this is a fact, guys. This is a fact. So you can't show me how the bad language used by the dunking, and then you don't show this, right? This was just to give you a little context. Now that I've shown you the kind of language that some of the people on Flint Dibble's side use. Now that you have that perspective, let's keep listening to the language that he thinks is inappropriate. I'll probably agree with that, but I needed to give you that to have a full context.
Have some sort of an issue with archaeologists. Now, I don't mean archaeology as a science, not the field itself. I mean the scientists, archaeologists.
Ugh, this is just petty abuse, man. Nasty hatred towards people whose sole crime is to have an underpaid job that researches the material.
Even this, look at this. It's replying. This is important to frame it. If we're going to be... I'm going to teach Flint Dibble. He can teach me archaeology. I'm going to teach him how to be fair. Dan Riches, the dunker, replying to. So, yes, he's calling him a liar. I personally don't like that. He used this pretty bad. I'll be honest with you. The dunking, I would, whatever. Use whatever language you want. I don't like this language. But what did they say to him? You need to show this. This is a conversation, probably an argument. You can't just show this without showing us what else was said to him. Because if someone comes to me, even though I'm a very polite individual and I don't use foul language just as my way to live my life, but if someone comes to me and starts calling me, you son of a B, then it's possible that I will snap and I'll speak back and I'll say, well, you tell that to your mother. And then you just take my little section and you're like, oh, look, Metatron is insulting another person's mother. Well, yeah, but what did they say to him? Okay, so this is an important aspect, because sometimes even the most polite among us, and people often call me a monk in morphine, even the most polite about us, I do remember that I made a video where I was discussing, and I'm going to share this with you right now. First time that I say this publicly, but I made a video about Hannibal Barca, and I used evidence, reason, and logic to demonstrate that it is more likely that Hannibal was Semitic, with some Italian ancestry rather than being black. Now, this upset an Afrocentrist so much that he had to come into my comment section under not that video, mind you, but the video where I announced the death of my mother when she passed away from cancer, and he left a comment writing, ha 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 ha, may she burn in hell, you deserve that, she deserved it because you're a white supremacist. Yeah, I could snap against someone like that because he's a disgusting human being. And if that happens and you take my comment and read it and you're like, oh my gosh, Metatron is horrible. Why would he say that? But you don't show what was told to me? That's not right. Okay, that's not right. So we have to put things into context.
Why? Because we tell the truth about Atlantis, that it never existed, and that believing in it is like believing in flat Earth. That's just scholarly consensus.
Archaeologists are lying about the history of Atlantis.
His acolyte Jimmy Corsetti has done similar things.
I honestly cannot believe the current state of modern archaeology today. It appears to have been corrupted, or at best, totally mismanaged at such a level that is now preventing us from actually learning information about our ancient past.
He has, for example, after the SAAs published a letter denouncing ancient apocalypse, Jimmy Corsetti replied by doxing the entire board of the SAAs, their names, their photographs, and their emails.
Yeah, so let me show you what doxing is, but once again, we need to see if this was public information. If this was not public information, then I would disagree personally with what Jimmy Corsetti did. I want to say something else about Jimmy Corsetti, and I will in a second, but just to give you a definition, I prepared it here. For those who don't know, because maybe English is not your first language, doxing, the action or process of searching for and publishing private or identifying information about a particular individual on the internet, typically with malicious intent. So as we continue, doxing is the act of publicly revealing personal information about someone without their consent, often online. And then we see other things. Doxing, sometimes doxing, is the act of revealing identifying information about someone online, such as their real name, home address. Usually this is the one that is the most frowned upon, and personally I think it should be illegal. Now, I don't know how it works when it comes to crime and laws, particularly stateside here in the United States. I don't know how it works, but of course, unfortunately, when it comes to content creators, this can lead to catastrophic situations. Like this can lead to the passing of people, unfortunately. So I think this is the worst of all of these. But in general, workplace, I disagree with that. It's wrong. To try and harass someone's workplace and take away their ability to support themselves and make money. And I would not encourage that type of behavior, whether even if it's my greatest enemy. I would tell you, guys, don't do it. Like if someone comes to me in chat, in Discord, and tells me, hey, you know that hater of yours, I got the personal information. Yeah, don't say it. Don't do that. So phone, financial, and of course, I imagine email and personal name and all real name. Yes, it will be doxing if this is private information, just to give you some clarity on what's being discussed here. And I think that that's wrong to do. I think we can all agree with that.
And he said that these are people that are making these decisions and they should be targeted. And in particular, when somebody asks him how, he said that they should review their books with appropriate reviews on Amazon and
yeah, I disagree with that. I think that's wrong.
Appropriate reviews on ratemyprofessors.com.
So I don't disagree with Flint Dibble in this.
Happened to Professor Bill Farley.
There's this one guy, he's a huge YouTuber, he's like 1.5 million followers.
Oh, okay, it's not who I'm thinking.
No, and this guy, he convinced, he directed them at several people, one of them was me, and asked them to write fake reviews about us on the internet.
As a truth supremacist, anything fake, I hate.
I saw somebody else talking about this, I think.
Yeah, it might have been Hoops or somebody, one of those guys. Because it was, or Flint Dibble maybe, might have been. So we were, yeah. So I had like 15 fake Rate My Professor reviews appear. That was like very weird day, and I tried to get them taken down, and they deleted some of them. Some of them are actually still up, and they're hilariously fake. They're clearly written by like 62-year-old men in their basements. Who definitely have never taken my classes. But they also called my employer, tried to get me fired. I had a whole day on the phone with HR and my dean and the police department, the university police department.
Us professionals, those of us with an education and decades of experience, we have this knowledge at our fingertips to be able to understand the context of the actual evidence we have. And so in today's ecosystem of information and misinformation, us professionals need to be speaking up. At the same time, we cannot...
And you professionals also need to be impartial, sir.
...not rely on the media and on public science communication to actually represent us adequately. So often we see headlines saying, archaeologists are baffled. We are constantly baffled and shocked and surprised and stunned by everything that we find. This is just, we are perplexingly confused at the mysteries of the past.
That's funny, though.
If you listen to the media,
to
YouTube, or to social media, or really anywhere.
This actually kind of reminds me of when people use in channel, in the comments, in the title of their videos, and they say, he said this and instantly regretted it. Mr. Imhotep used that with me a few times. Let me just make it clear. I might even make a dedicated video. I regret nothing. Of all the things I said in my videos, the ones that I misspoke, I've already removed, privated, corrected, or addressed, including debunking videos of myself. But I definitely don't regret what people say I regret. So if you see Metatron said this and instantly regretted it, I didn't regret anything, just so you know.
From CNN and documentaries onwards, it's all about mysteries and us being completely confused.
Since you're not going to do it on your own, to be impartial and call out both sides, I'm going to put you in a position where now I'm going to ask you the question. Because here's the thing. What is your opinion of this? Because it is a documentary. on Netflix. So, do I agree with Flint Dibble? Should they remove the word docu-series or documentary if it gives it an appearance of authority and absolute correct, academically approved truth from ancient apocalypse? Sure, I agree with him. Great. But then they need to remove documentary from Netflix Cleopatra, though. Okay? Here it is, a Netflix documentary, Queen Cleopatra. It's not that it's a matter, because some people say, oh, is it because Cleopatra, they're showing her black? No, they're not showing Cleopatra black. They're showing the entirety of the Ptolemy family black, and that's incorrect. Show me a Kandake. They were black. And if you show me a black queen, Kandake, and you show her white, I'll complain about it. You guys tell me, look, no, I don't think it's going to happen. But Netflix, they took a blonde, blue-eyed girl, and she's playing the Kandake Amanirenas, and they call it a documentary. Could you imagine that? But imagine in an alternative reality. Let's say they do it. Tomorrow they do it, because they got a lot of money for it. And these companies only care about the money. If they do that, I'll make a debunking video, and I'll ask them, hey, remove the word documentary. This is nonsense. The Kandake were black. Stop changing and race swapping. But due to the fact that this happened, I have a question for Dr. Dibble. What is your opinion of this? Dr. Dibble, what is your opinion on this? Are you going to say it? I'm looking forward. I'm happy to discuss it live. I'm happy to pre-record. And then if you are not comfortable doing it live.
But this topic of pseudo-archaeology, we oftentimes think of it as sort of at a remove. And I want to make sure that we realize that this has an actual impact on the day-to-day archaeology that your colleagues are doing right now. Your colleagues are being impacted as pseudoscientists go on YouTube or brag about breaking in and trespassing on archaeological sites. Graham Hancock in Fingerprints of the Gods brags about bribing the guards at Giza in order to climb the pyramids.
We had a local guy who made contact with all the guards around the pyramid. We paid him money, I forget the exact amount. He said he'd paid them off. But then when we got to the base of the pyramid, we had to walk all the way around it, which is a considerable distance, 750 feet along each side. We had to walk.
I will comment on this.
Walk all the way around it, and then we had to add more money to each of the guards at the four corners. And then we went up, and my advice to anybody who's climbing the Great Pyramid, which is pretty much impossible these days, either legally or illegally, is go up the southwest corner.
My advice to anyone who is going to climb the pyramids or any archaeological site is to only do it legally. So when it comes to this, I think that's what I should have said, and I disagree with him in the way he said it. I believe rules are there for a reason and we should follow them. But I do want to say something, which is my experience, when it comes to local authorities and archaeological sites. I visited a lot of archaeological sites and the way they ask for money. So, to have a complete picture, is this really a situation where there was some bribing, or was he asked for money in order to receive access to a certain section? Because I was asked for money. In Sicily, my own land. I'm not a foreigner who's going there because he wants to do a silly TikTok thing. No, I was in the educational department. I worked as a teacher for 10 years in Italy, and I was visiting several ancient Greek and ancient Roman archaeological sites in Sicily. And then when I asked, because I follow the rules, and it's important to always follow the rules. That's one thing that I agree with Dibble. I did promise that I would be fair. If I agree, I agree. Up to this point, I didn't agree, but I do agree with the idea of legality and following rules, specifically when it comes to archaeological sites. So I asked all archaeological authorities, and they are the ones connected to the Department of Archaeology in any local university. That's how it works. And I asked them, hey, I want to make some videos. I want to take some footage and take some pictures for my YouTube channel. At the time, I had like 50,000 subs. It was still at the beginning of my career as a YouTuber, so I was still a full-time teacher at the same time. You know what they asked me? You need to give us 5,000 euros every single day. You're only allowed to film in low resolution. I have the email, by the way, to prove this. If any of my detractor says Metatron is making this up, I have the email. You need to only film in low resolution, and then you need to give us $50 for every $500, I think it was, $50 per picture, and then 10 pictures, $500, or you're not allowed to do any of that. So, yeah, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So that happened to me. and which is nonsense, because then you see people with phones all the time filming, and then they upload it on their social media. So there is that. And besides, at the time, I couldn't afford that, which is why I had to stop filming in loco. I only had an opportunity at one of the temple sites because the person there actually decided, you know what, yeah, just do it, don't worry about it. And so I filmed. So this does happen. Okay, so I don't know if it's a situation of, oh, this is something shady. No, they always ask for money in locations like this. That is my experience. Just wanted to give you a little bit of context when it comes to that.
Because the southwest corner is pretty intact. It's pretty much a straight line.
Jimmy Corsetti, one of his acolytes on Twitter and YouTube, has...
Acolytes. Oh my gosh, acolytes. This is my acolyte. This is my acolyte.
Recently been bragging about breaking into sites in Turkey in order to do an archaeological audit of them, despite the fact he has no experience and he's just selling lies.
Yeah, I wouldn't have called it an archaeological audit. I would have called it maybe journalism or YouTube journalism, but whatever.
I basically went there with the intention of conducting an archaeological audit of sorts to evaluate the entire situation with my own eyes and, of course, my camera lens. So this video is part one, and I'm going to share a number of alarming and disturbing things with you. And my next video will be part two, which will really put the nail in the coffin to show that there is something incredibly wrong happening at Göbekli Tepe, and the entire world has a right to know what it is. On-site security specifically instructed us to not take any photos or videos of these holes. The guy literally stated that it is, quote, prohibited. And to be honest, I still would have taken the photos anyway, but the truth is that we had already taken the photos and videos prior to being told that we weren't allowed to.
I wonder why it's prohibited, by the way. Like, I understand you're not allowed to take pictures sometimes in a museum because the flash could interact with the, for example, colors or pigments in medieval paintings. So sometimes you're instructed not to do it, and there is a reason. However, in a outside site like this, again, if this is the rule, I wouldn't have taken the pictures because I do follow the rules. Although then again, in this case, he said he had taken the pictures prior to being told. So, I mean, at that point, I don't know what to say. At that point, why didn't they make a sign? Then it's wrong, but whatever. I'll tell you what I think about Jimmy Corsetti's in a second, by the way. Today, I'm sharing my opinions.
And that was simply due to our small group having split up, and he was taking turns visiting us around different parts of the site at different times. So unfortunately for him, we beat him to it, and he never had any idea. And I honestly have absolutely no regrets for possessing these photos and videos.
Right.
As well, it's been very clearly documented in several publications the impact that pseudo-archaeology and pseudoscience has on local communities. For example, this publication about Gunung Padang documents the floods of New Age tourists that have showed up in Indonesia after this site has been proclaimed Atlantis. And so the site and the local infrastructure cannot support all these tourists, and it has major impacts on the site and the community itself.
Okay, well then I think that would be a great opportunity for the site to capitalize on it, to be honest. Maybe it's because I live in America now, so I'm starting to look at it from a marketing perspective. But if interest is shown to a specific site and that brings in tourism, well, tourists spend money. So maybe that could be beneficial. Maybe it's not necessarily, I'm just asking in this way, it's not necessarily a counter argument, but I'm saying, couldn't that be used to the advantage of the local economy?
At the same time, there's a clear relationship between pseudoscience and the impact on vandalism and looting and forgeries. So on the right is a pseudoscientist, Marcel.
Because it was an opportunity for me to clarify, I skipped it because they use words that are going to get me in trouble with the system. Okay, but I do, so I know that they're using words that to me look like, it's not good. That's a big red flag. So yeah, I agree with you.
Foti, who believes that the pyramids were built out of conglomerate blocks that were, geopolymers. And he proves this by acquiring a stone from Giza, licking it and telling us how salty it is.
Yeah,
because that proves the science that it's a geopolymer.
Yeah, that sounds like nonsense.
On the left, we have images of these granite vases that there's a whole cottage industry of YouTubers that acquire these on the black market. Some of them are perhaps legitimate archaeological artifacts that have been looted and smuggled out of Egypt. Others are possibly,
which is wrong,
possibly forgeries. And there's dozens of YouTubers that do analyses on these.
I wish I could stop looking at this guy licking a stone, though.
Artifacts and claim they're too precise to have come from primitive Bronze Age technology. They must have been made with machines.
No. When I look at, and again, I'm not an archaeologist, but every time with all the vases that I looked at because of my interest and the classes that I've taken on ancient history, when I was a university student, these look man-made, absolutely, to me.
From primitive Bronze Age technology, they must have been made with machines.
Let's dig a little deeper into where they found this vase.
Right. Okay, this is from World of Antiquity. If you remember, I made a debunking video about World of Antiquity's positions on ancient Rome and how he said that they are not European, and that the word white shouldn't be used for ancient Romans, and then he disagrees with me, so we kind of clashed there, but only the arguments. We still have mutual respect, and in fact, he recently invited me to one of his live streams, and I went as a guest, and we were both cordial, just so you know where we stand when it comes to World of Antiquity.
While in Egypt a few years back with his father, Alex met Adam Young, who happened to have a couple of ancient pieces in his possession, including this vase. Artifacts like this do come up for sale or auction from time to time, usually from estate sales or from private collections.
Right.
So here we learn that the vase was part of a collection owned by Adam Young, who acquired the pieces from private owners. As you may know, trading artifacts across international boundaries is illegal.
Right.
Laws are different for different countries, but generally speaking, if the objects were obtained after 1970, it is more likely they were obtained illegally. There is a flourishing illegal antiquities market, and this causes a lot of problems for historical investigation, as you might guess, not only because it encourages the theft of artifacts from archaeological sites and prevents us from ever knowing where artifacts came from, but also because it encourages the creation of archaeological forgeries.
Okay, I agree with Ancient and World of Antiquities here. Now, I don't know. There are some legitimate private collectors that do buy sometimes from museums. Occasionally it does happen. There is like an auction and the object is being sold. So it's not like any person who owns, if at any point there is a helmet from a museum and they're going to sell it, and I'm like, if for whatever reason in the future I become rich, I will buy the freaking bronze helmet from the museum. But I'm saying it is true that unfortunately oftentimes it does happen that real objects and artifacts are smuggled and there is a black market, and that's a horrible thing to do. So I agree with him, and therefore by connection I believe that I agree with Flint Dibble on this position.
Fake artifacts abound on the antiquities market because dealers can make a lot of money selling them to unsuspecting customers.
Absolutely.
So this has real impacts on our sites and on what we do. At the same time,
he's right on this.
I want to highlight that the next slide shows human remains. Here it is. These are the tridactyls, these so-called aliens that were presented in front of Mexico's Congress. And it turns out that these were formed from a combination of indigenous archaeological human remains and animal remains so that they could return a C14 date that shows that they were ancient.
Most intriguing criticism of the mummies to me is that the back of a llama skull looks very similar to the face of the mummies. A Peruvian paleontologist named Dr. Rodolfo Salsas-Gismondi provided this video and gave me permission to use it for my documentary. It does look strikingly similar to the facial structure of the mummies, and in my opinion it's the best physical evidence that skeptics have put forward so far that shows that these might have been manufactured.
And so this is the kind of damage that is done to this heritage here, just disrespecting and desecrating.
Yeah, that's horrible, so I agree.
Remains as well as archaeological artifacts. I'm done.
Thank you very much for watching this video. Please remember to click the link in the description and take advantage of the amazing offer NordVPN has for you. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.